So good day everyone, I'm Rasul Sulaiman of BSED Math 2 and this is the continuation of chapter 4. So let's proceed to the effect if marriage not celebrated. So this is the continuation and Article 81 said that everything stipulated in the settlements or contracts referred to the preceding articles in consideration of a future marriage including donations between perspectives. So it talks about the donations between the supposed prospective, suppose the man and woman made there and should be rendered void if the marriage does not take place. But however, stipulation that do not depend upon the celebration of the marriages should be valid. So donations by the reasons of marriage. Um, in Article 82, donation by reason of marriage are those which are made before its celebration. So it's made before its celebrations in consideration of the same, the both man and woman, and in favor of one or both of the future suppose. So if the future suppose agree upon a regime, one of them agree or they agree both other than the absolute community of property, they cannot donate to each other in the marriage settlements more than 1/5 of their present property. So any excess should be considered void. So yun, um, that was according to Article 84 of Family Code. Revocation of donations by reasons of marriage. Um, so donation by reason of marriage may be revoked. So it can be revoked by the donor in the following cases. The first one is if the marriage is not celebrated or um, judicially declared void and issue except the donations made in the marriage settlements. So which should be governed by the Article 81. So nasabi na natin kanyang Article 81, the first discussion. The second one is when the marriage takes place without the consent of the parents. So need dito yung consent ng parents, guardians, or as required by law. So dapat required siya by law. Then third one, when the marriage is annulled and the donee or the acts yung tumanggap ng regalo or no donations acted in bad faith. So pag if they if he or she acted in bad faith, so the donations can be revoked. And the last one is upon legal separation, the donee being guilty party. So one of the future suppose being guilty, so the donations by marriage can be revoked. Donation by and between the spouse during marriage. So according to Article 87 of Family Code, every donation or grant of gratuitous advantage, direct or indirect, between the spouse during the marriage should be void, except moderate gifts which the spouse may give each other on the occasions of any family rejoicing. So the prohibition shall also apply to persons living together as husband and wife without a valid marriage. So we are now in chapter 3 of Family Code, which is System of Absolute Community. So in section 1, it talks about the general provisions, non-waiver of rights. So in Article 89 of Chapter 3, no waiver of rights, shares, and effects on the absolute community of property during the marriage can be made except in the case of judicial separation of property. So, when the waiver takes place upon a judicial separation of property or after the marriage has been dissolved or annulled, the same shall appear in a public instrument and should be recorded as provided in Article 77. So the creditors of the supposed who made such waiver may petition the court to rescind the waiver to the extent of the amount sufficient to cover the amount of their credits. Um, Applicability of co-ownership. So in Article 90, um, the prevention on co-ownership shall apply to the absolute community of property between the supposed and all matters not provided in uh, all matters not provided for the under law on absolute community of property. So we are done with the section 1, which is general prevention. So now let's talk about the section 2, what constitutes community property. So um, in Article 91 said that unless otherwise provided in the chapter or in the marriage settlements, the community property should consist of all the property owned by the spouse at the time of the celebration of the marriage or acquired thereafter. So this can also be excluded from the community property. So these are the follows that following should include following. The first one is property acquired during the marriage by the gratuitous title by either spouse and the fruits as well as the income thereof, if any, unless is expressly provided by the donor, testator, or grantor that they should form part of the community property. The second one is property for um, personal and exclusive use of their spouse. However, jewelry should form part of the community property. Yeah. The last one is property acquired before the marriage by either spouse who has legitimate descendants by a former marriage and the fruits as well as the income, if any, of such property. So, yun yung sa chapter section 2. So now let's talk about the section 3. It's charge and obligation of the absolute community. So the absolute community of property should be liable for, so we have 10. The first one is the support of the spouse, their common children, and legitimate children of their spouse. However, the support of the illegitimate children should be governed by the prevention of this code on support. Number 2, all debts and obligation contracted during the marriage by the designated administrator spouse for the benefit of the community or by both spouses or by one spouse with the consent of the other. Third one is debt and obligations contracted either spouse without the consent of the other to the extent the family may have been benefited. Fourth one, all taxes, liens, charges, and expenses, including major or minor repairs upon the community property. Fifth, all taxes and expenses for marriage preventions made during marriage upon the separations property of their spouse used by the family. Number six, expenses to enable either spouse to commence or complete a professional or vocational course or other activity for self-improvement. Number seven, anti-nuptial debt of either spouse insofar as they have re- redounded to the benefit of the family. Number 8, the value of what is donated or promised by both spouses in favor of their common legitimate children for the exclusive purposes of commencing or completing a professional or vocational course or other activity for self-improvement. Number 9, anti-nuptial debt of either spouse other than those falling under paragraph 7 of this article, the support of illegitimate children of their spouse and liabilities incurred by either spouse by reasons of a crime or quasi-delict in case of absence of sufficiency of the exclusive property of the debtor spouse, the payment of which should be considered as absence to the deducted form that share of the debtor spouse upon liquidations of the community. And lastly, expenses of litigation between the spouses unless the suit is found to be groundless. So, um, Section 4, Ownership, Administrative, Enjoyment and Dispositions of the Community Property. So, in Article 96 of Family Code, the administration and enjoyment of the community property shall belong to both spouses jointly. If in case of disagreement, the husband decision shall prevail, subject to recourse to the court by the wife for proper remedy, which must be availed for within 5 years from the date of the contract implementing such decision. So, in the event that one spouse is incapacitated or otherwise unable to participate in the administrations of the common properties, the other spouse may assume sole powers of administrations. These powers do not include disposition or encumbrance without authority of the court or the written consent of the other spouse. In the absence of such authority or consent, the disposition or encumbrance should be void. However, the transactions should be constructed as continuing offer on the part of the constructing spouse and the third person. Third, it may be perfected as a binding contract upon the acceptance by the other spouse or authorizations by the court before the offer is withdrawn by either or both offerers. Um, Either spouse may dispose by will of his or her interest and community property. So that's in Article 97. And Article 98, neither spouse may donate any community property without the consent of the other. However, either spouse may, without the consent of the other, make moderate donations from the community property or charity or an occasion of family rejoicing or family distress. So, yan. Laman ng Section 4, Ownership Administration. So, Section 5, Dissolution of Absolute Community Regime. So, the absolute community has a 4 terminates. So, in Article 99, meron tayong 4 terminates. The first one is upon the death of either suppose. So, pag namatay ang isa sa kanila, number 2, second one, when there is a decree of legal separation. So, yan, legal separation. The third one is when the marriage is annulled or declared void. And lastly, in case of judicial separation of property during the marriage under Article 134 to 138. So, in Article 134 to 138, it's under Chapter 5, which talks about the separation of property of supposes and administrations of common property by one suppose during the marriage. Okay, so last section 3, conjugal partnership property. So, all property acquired during the marriage, whether the acquisitions appears to have been made, contracted, or registered in the name of one or both of the spouses, is presumed to be conjugal unless the contrary is proved. So, these are the following are conjugal um, partnership properties. So, we have 7 conjugal partnership properties. The first one is those acquired by onerous title during the marriage at the expense of the common fund, whether the acquisitions by be for the partnership or for only one of the spouses. Number 2 is those obtained from the labor, industry, work, or professions of either both or both of the spouses. Third one is the fruits, natural, industrial, or civil, due or received during the marriage from the common property, as well as the net fruits from the exclusive property of each spouse. Fourth one is the share of either spouse in a hidden treasure, which the law awards to the finder or owner of the property where the treasure is found. Fifth is those uh, acquired through occupations such as fishing or hunting or any occupation. Number 6 is livestock existing upon the dissolutions of the partnership in excess of the number of each kind brought to the marriage by the either spouse. And lastly, those which are acquired by chance, such as winning from gambling or betting. However, losses therefrom shall be burned exclusively by the loser suppose. So that's all. Thank you for watching.